Hi everyone, let's talk about the impact of human activities on stability, slope stability. So humans generally, we want to develop areas, we want to develop land, and because land is limited, sometimes we do have to build on slopes which are not flat, and therefore we generally have a destabilizing effect on slopes. So as you can see here my the things we generally do on slopes. The first thing is excavation, mining, and quarrying. As you can see here, it's the dotted outline is the original slope, and we've undercutted it. So ignoring this whole part, we've undercut the slope. And what this is it allows the top mass over here to act more freely. Sometimes if you're mining, quarrying, you might dig inside the slope, and this again lessens its support. The mass on top can act more freely under gravity. So gravity has a more visible effect, and therefore shear stress increases. So after you excavate, you mine and quarry, what are you going to do with the material that you've taken out? So we do sometimes spoil heaps. Spoil heaps are just mounds of unconsolidated loose material that we've excavated. Often we do it on flat land. Sometimes we also do it on slopes. The mass movements here can either occur on the spoil heaps or on the slopes that the spoil heaps are put on. So it adds loose unconsolidated mass. So adding mass will increase your shear stress. So because you're putting unnatural weight on it, but it's also loose, so it's unconsolidated. Therefore, it's more porous and it allows more water to infiltrate in. It's more permeable. So your spoil heap will get lubricated really easily, really fast, and not only that, your water also increases your mass that is inside your spoil heap. For the spoil heap itself, you have lower shear strength and higher shear stress, but for the overslope, it's generally higher shear stress. Now move on to loading and construction. So building on slopes is quite difficult because it's not flat land. So even in kind of relative flat land, humans generally do some excavation to make it quite flat. So we take this excavation and we do cut and filling. So cut and filling is essentially undercutting this area and then taking the material to dump it over here to extend on the flat area, the flat plane. So this part, the undercutted part, is called the cut slope, and the part that we've taken the material and dumped on is called the fill slope. Cut and fill, if you look at this only, so excavating, you're undercutting, so you're increasing your shear stress. This part has more, it can move more freely under gravity, so increasing your shear stress over here. As for this part, this fill slope part, it is adding mass to it. So this, if you just look at this bottom part of the slope, there's increased mass, so increased shear stress. But not only that, the fill slope is unconsolidated. It's not stuck together like the previously. It's quite new. Maybe there's no vegetation. It's basically a new mass regolith, and you might have a slip plane over here. So it's easy for water to get through because it's quite loose. It's more porous and permeable because it's just been excavated and dumped on it. It's not been compacted or anything. So water can get into it really easily. It can lubricate this area. So you have less shear strength because water lubricating it, and more shear stress because it's steeper. As you can see, this is the original slope, and it's like kind of towards the up end. The angle is steeper, so the mass has more effect, and also you adding mass to it as well. So increase shear stress and decrease shear strength with cut and filling. But after you cut and fill, what do? The original purpose was to load or construct on it. You can construct roads, you can construct houses, anything. So as you can see here, I've drawn a house. So the house adds mass, right? So you increase your shear stress. That's understandable. However, when you're building houses and anything, especially on slopes and stuff, you generally have foundations put inside the ground. And what this does is it cuts off your percolate lines and drainage routes for your water in your soil. So water that rains down over here might want to, under the influence of gravity, travel a bit laterally down. However, they're going to get stuck in the foundations of your buildings. And what occurs if it gets stuck? It will just oversaturate that area, adding mass to it, increasing your shear stress. And the area will be kind of almost permanently lubricated, and you have less frictional force, so you have less shear strength. So let's move on to deforestation and overgrazing now. Deforestation, you're just cutting down trees. Overgrazing is maybe farmers letting their animals roam free and they're eating up all the grass. What occurs is your roots die. So your roots that was holding the soil together, regolith together, rocks together originally, they die, so less binding effect, so you have decreased your shear strength, but also less infiltration rate. So vegetation, they increase your infiltration rate because the roots are breaking up the soil, so it's more loose. It's also providing water to trickle down with the roots into the ground, so there's a pathway for the roots, for the water. And also the vegetation take up the water, so there's more space in the soil for water to continuously infiltrate. That's why your infiltration rate increases. But if you deforest or you overgraze, you're moving your vegetation, that's the opposite effects. So your infiltration rate will decrease. You have no vegetation taking up the water. You have no breaking up the soil to let water run through. And with less infiltration rates, this means your slope gets saturated much more faster. Maybe there's less space for water to go down much more deeper. So you get really oversaturation really quickly, and because of that, you have increased shear stress with the mass of the water, and also decreased shear strength with the lubrication. But the most important thing is if you get saturated really quickly, or you have less infiltration rate, the excess water, where it's going to go, it's going to either sheet wash or rill. So you have more erosion from your movement of water on the slope surfaces. More erosion, it may undercut, and therefore you increase your shear stress, and you might have mass movements. As for traffic, so cars, trucks, anything driving, they add a lot of mass. Cars are really heavy, trucks are really heavy, fans are really heavy, so shear stress increases. Vibrations, they are kind of like disturbing noises and stuff, which adds force to it, and it might initiate a mass movement, so you have increased your stress. As for footpaths, so just anything that allows for humans to walk, or even animals, it accelerates erosion because you're walking in it, you're compacting the soil, so you might erode the landscape. This kind of undercuts the slope a bit, but it's quite minute, it's quite localized, so it may not be too large of an effect as compared to excavation. However, footpaths, when you have a lot of walking and stuff, they might create pathways for rills and gullies, so increasing your erosion with water, and that might lead to more undercutting and increasing your shear stress. However, here's a tip: don't think of all this in isolation. Don't just think spore heaps, that's all. Don't just think deforestation. You have to combine all of them. So after you excavate and mine, you might have spore heaps. When you're excavating, you're gonna probably build on it. When you're excavating, you might remove the vegetation. When you're building, you might remove the vegetation. When you're constructing, you might have traffic. So to get your building materials to your construction site, you might have traffic, and that has that effect on it. Best tip is to not think of all of this in isolation. Of course, memorize all of them, but don't think of all of them in isolation. They are all interlinked together, and find ways to link as many of them together, and that's how you get top marks in your exam. So this sums up for the impact of human activities on slope stability. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.